This is Matt.
Hi, guys.
How's it going, Matt?
He's our lead editor on the show.
How's it going, man? Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Do you have any tips for young editors on building their career, would you say?
Yeah, just don't stop doing creative work. You know, if you become an assistant editor, sometimes you start, you get so caught up in that job, and I know I did for a long time, that you start losing, the creative part of the filmmaking process. And because assistant, any job you do in the film business it's a job, and sometimes you lose where your passion was and what you wanted to do. So even if you're an assistant editor or you're cutting stuff, never stop looking for avenues to spark that creative, thing that's going on in your brain. But whether it's cutting short films or doing stuff for friends or doing stuff for yourself that, will always build on your knowledge. And don't be afraid to cut something that's bad. If you don't like the script, but it's your only opportunity or something like that, do it. It makes you a better editor because you have to figure out how to make something that shouldn't work.
Wow.
Because that's all we do is problem solve all day long. What's the best way to tell the story? What's the best way to convey some emotion or reaction and it's a puzzle. It's a really great part of the storytelling process of, what shots go where. And you don't, it comes with experience and doing it and trial and error. And don't be afraid to fail, try it different ways. Every single, reverse order, switch scenes around, see what works, but don't stop trying things. And don't stop, reaching out to people and asking them. And don't be afraid to ask. Look at it. One of the things that when I first started my career, I always was looking for work, and you're trying to find people you connect with and really bond with it because you're around them so long when you do these jobs. But put yourself in their shoes. So let's say you're going to send out like a cold email. Hey, I'm looking for work, or hey, I really like the thing that you did. I would love to work with you. Put yourself in their shoes. I know sometimes it's nerve-wracking to send out emails or reach out to people because you don't want to inconvenience people. You don't want to take their time. But then put yourself in their shoes. If you were there and you got these emails and you wouldn't be like, oh, what's this? And just, ignore it. You would be like, oh, okay, look at somebody's interested in what I do and what I have done, or, and they would respond. And it was a mindset that I had to do, like, oh, I can't reach out to this person because I know how busy they're. You just reach out, because there's no harm in reaching out to other people and getting advice. And the more you reach out, the more people the more people, if you reach out to 10 people, maybe 2 people respond or 1 person responds, but it's a response. And it can always lead, it can open a door somewhere, because you never know who's going to say, yeah, come in. Let me see what you can do.
Is there anything that you do where there's so much new technology and different types of media now with like Instagram and music video has become so innovative? Are there things that you do to keep inspired as an editor and get you thinking in new directions?
Yeah, and never stop watching stuff. I'll get on Instagram. I'll get on TikTok. I'll see what's, listen to all the new music, everything that's coming out, new books, magazines, everything. Music videos. You try to. It's hard when you're working so much. New movies. Never stop watching content. Never seeing how people are doing stuff.
But like Matt always comes in my room and he's like, hey, did you see that new Cowboy Bebop trailer? Or did you see this or that? They're really doing some like really cool, new, innovative stuff,
Never stop being inquisitive. Always kind of look to see what's current and what's old, because, there's some amazing filmmakers that were making incredible movies way before you were born. So it's not just the current stuff. Look at old stuff too, but stay current and stay up to date and stay, fresh with what's trending and, but don't try to copy anything, because each film's different. You have to find the tone, you have to find the voice of it. And sometimes it's hard, you'll try 20 different ways to cut a scene. But when it clicks, it. And then you can apply it to the rest of the movie. And it's all, it's all rhythm and tonal and stuff. So try different pieces of music. So, you'll find it, but you can't stop investigating. And you're like, oh, this is okay. Don't stop it. Okay. See if you can always keep on plussing it.
I'm so inspired by that. I love how you're saying, like, you study the classics and you're familiar with the classics and film history, but you're also watching TikTok and music videos. So you have that spectrum of time and, eras. That's like, it's amazing how you're just, being aware of all the different things that are happening in popular culture. Because I think
Well, yeah.
you guys are creating popular culture.
Well, yeah, and you have to be, because you'll have a director that's, just the same way. So you want to be current with the stuff. So when they walk in and be like, hey, did you see that on, did you watch that movie this weekend? Did you see this? What's, so you kind of, you do it to be up, and you can have conversations with it. But you also want to sit there and be like, hey, did you see this? I saw this in a movie and I wanted to see if we could try it for this scene. Or,
Wow.
how about some sound design like this? It can take you down a bunch of different paths. And if you find the tonal connection between current projects or projects that you've worked on, it makes your job easier too.
Now, this is kind of random, but have you ever had a thing where you're like really struggling with the scene, then you go home and you take a bath and suddenly you're like, oh, I know what to do with this scene? Do you ever have these moments of like you're really like kind of hitting a brick wall and then suddenly you're somewhere else and you're like, I know what to do?
All the time.
Or it happens after the movie's released.
I mean, on Black Widow, there's things where I'm sitting there going, oh, because we were rushing and rushing and rushing and rushing. And it was like 2 months later on Black Widow, I was sitting there watching it with my daughters, and I was like, oh, dang it. Could have made it so much better. Or not so much better, a little bit better. It was just one little section. But yeah, you never stop thinking about it. And have a notepad or put it in your phone. Send an email to yourself, send a text to yourself, because you could be riding a bike through a park and come up with a great, you never know. Have a pen and pad by your bedstand. You wake up, write it down. You're going to sleep, write it down, and then refresh your memory in the morning. I always keep a notebook of like all my ideas on ideas for scripts, ideas for movies, ideas for the scenes. There's a couple scenes in the movie that I'm working on now that I think about, when I'm driving home. I think about, when I'm in the shower. I think about when I'm walking the dog, and I can't crack it. And then, one day I'll be tying my shoe and I'll be like, oh, let me try that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But usually the bad decision or the not quite, their one leads you in another direction. So there's no bad ideas. There's just different ideas that can lead you and open the door and open your brain to other ideas that could be better. Don't be afraid to voice your opinion. If you're in a room with people, follow your gut. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. With cuts and where you are or who you're on or what dialogue's being said. And you can usually tell. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
Wow. Now, both you guys have kids, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you ever show them something and just get like their natural instinct response to something? And does that kind of inform anything ever? I know sometimes my son watches something and like, I know when he likes it and when he doesn't. I think it tells me something.
Yeah, sometimes I do. Not really.
It's hard on these movies.
With security and everything, it's very tough.
I get it.
With these,
yeah, you don't want him to go spilling the plot line, right?
If we were working on an independent movie, it would be different.
And I might not, show him something, but I might ask him.
Interesting.
I just got into, a friend of mine's a screenwriter, and he sent me a script to read and give notes on. And I had my, it was a kind of a coming of age story, young adult thing. So I had my daughter read it. And she's 16, and she had great notes.
Wow.
So you never know where it's gonna, and that's why you shouldn't be afraid to ask people and share your ideas, because the feedback you get is usually pretty invaluable. So you never know where ideas are going to come from, and that's why it takes a community kind of to make a movie and collaborate with everybody, because you never know when the good idea is going to come or a bad idea is going to turn into a good idea.
I love it. Do you guys ever get surprised by the data that comes back from a test screening where like you really thought something was working and it didn't make sense to an audience, or, test screening caused you guys to go in a different direction? Has that ever happened?
All the time.
Every test screening.
Okay.
All the time. Every single one, because we're so close to it. So it makes total sense to us. And then they'll go, yeah, I was confused about this. And you're like, looking around going, really? And then you take a step back and you go, okay, I can understand why. Yeah, so test screenings are invaluable. They really, you put it in front of 80 100, sometimes 400 people, a big theater, not so much anymore with the pandemic, but yeah, that test screenings are invaluable. The information you take away, and sometimes it's like one person going, I'm confused, and then you restructure the whole movie, or they say, I'm confused, and you go, oh, that's just one person, because you evaluate the information that you're taking from it,
Right.
And if it's a real confusion, or if it's just, one person not really paying attention or trying to sound smart.
Or one person that has a problem with a pig holding its breath.
Yes.
In Black Widow, and that became a thing. Oh, maybe it's animal cruelty. It's like, it's a fake pig.
Wow, that's really incredible. I'm really inspired by, just how staying creative and trying a scene, a bunch of different ways, and how different types of music can really affect a scene and the whole perception of that scene. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it takes a lot to make a film, a short film, a 10-minute movie, a 2-hour movie, and you should never stop until you're 100% happy with it. These movies are a little different. We run out of time, but if you have the time, just keep working it. The director will say he's happy with the scene. Doesn't mean I just take it and put it aside. I go and I revisit it and see how it fits in the, as I make other changes in the movie. You sit there and you go, okay, now maybe the scene's too long, or maybe the pace of it, maybe I actually need to move it here. The scene's still good, but I still go in and I still, tinker with the scene, even after, everybody said they were really happy with it, and just to see if I could make it that much better.
Just each one of you guys, what has been one of your favorite movies that you've worked on recently, and why? What was it about the team or the experience or the creativity of it that you really loved?
For me, it would have to be Endgame. And it would be working with the Russo brothers for like the 4th time. But the Endgame of Endgame, seeing it in theaters with an audience was mind-blowing. Making it was challenging, because we did Infinity War and Endgame back to back. So like 2.5 years straight. But the end result, the movie was really good, and sitting in a theater and watching, people react to it and have a visceral reaction, and just,
and that movie, I don't think look, it got credit. It's the highest grossing movie of all time, but I think people very quickly kind of dismiss it as like a big action movie, but the stuff that movie accomplished, you very rarely see it. They tied up all of those characters, all those plot lines. It all worked. It all was like very emotional and moving. It's a really hard thing to do.
Wow. Now, Dave was talking with great fondness about the director of Black Widow, and also the director, I think it was Patty Jenkins, who directed Wonder Woman. They come from more like an independent, background, right? In terms of their evolution as directors. Do you feel like that's important to go into this, like, sort of like a different perspective in this sort of big budget action genre?
Yeah, they bring a freshness to it that is, pretty incredible. And when you said what was my favorite experience, I almost said Black Widow, but I think Endgame beat it out barely. But Black Widow, because I had a really great relationship with the director, a friendship, and it really blossomed over time. So hiring directors that are fresh and come from a world where everything's like run and gun and no money, and you have to figure out how you're going to do something, and those are really the creative, not that blockbuster directors or ones that haven't been around for a while aren't that, but they come up with fresh ideas and fresh ways of looking at stuff, and trying to, because they've always had to cut corners. Now they don't have to cut corners, so their hands are untied, and they're like, okay, well, if I could, this is what I really want to do. And that's one thing about Marvel. They really reach out there to different directors, and Taika Waititi and Kate Shortland and the Russo brothers. They hadn't done much before they did, Winter Soldier. They're always looking for a new talent and to take a chance, and it's always because they like their previous material.
Wow, that's incredible. I wanted to see if you guys would be willing to have a couple of our young filmmakers just ask a couple questions. They're big fans of the movies that you guys create. Would that be all right with you?
Of course.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, hi. Big fan of Marvel, by the way.
Oh, great.
What would you do if a client wasn't pleased with your work?
Well, I mean, that always happens. I mean, a director directs something, they have a certain vision, we put it together the best that we can and following, script notes and stuff that he likes. And you're not going to knock it out of the park, every single time, or rarely you'll knock it out of the park. Certain times you will, but again, it's a creative, collaborative process. And, I've had directors look at stuff that I've done and they're like, yeah, I don't think you really nailed it. This isn't what I was looking for.
Wow.
And then they give you some feedback and you go and you rework it. And the next time you show him, you just hope he doesn't say the same thing, because then you're not on the same page. But usually once you get some feedback, or sometimes you just sit in the room and you recut a scene and you get it better to, to where the director is really happy. The first cut, the first thing that you do isn't going to be what it's going to become or stay as, because it's always going to change. It's always going to evolve. And if you think that, your first pass or second pass or third pass is going to be kind of where you stop, that's not, you have to keep on going back to it for yourself even, and making sure that it really is. Because I'll cut something and I'll come in the next day and be like, well, that's awful. With fresh eyes. And, when you're in it, you're like, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. Look at this. And then you come back and you go, oh, music's wrong. Or I could go in and dig for different takes and different performances. So if somebody came in and watched what you did and said, yeah, I'm not a big fan of this, how can we improve this? What are you looking for? And then it evolves into a scene that you're both happy with. So you can't, sometimes I get discouraged because sometimes I think I nailed something and the director will come in and be like, oh, this is okay, but I was thinking going the other way. And you're like, oh, you know how hard that was to do? But then you dig into it with the director or with his notes, and it evolves into something that you're happy with and he's happy or she's happy with.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Working for like a big, huge company like Marvel Studios, do you guys feel like rushed, or like do you have to be on your feet?
All the time.
Yeah, there's always a deadline.
Yeah,
always a screening to prepare for. Meetings to get ready for.
You're always chasing something. I mean, and it kind of goes for the industry at large. It's a tough business. It's a really tough business. It's long hours and you're away from home. I was in Australia for 5 months where I didn't see my family. I love what I do. Sometimes it's challenging. A lot of times it's challenging, but as long as you have a passion for it, it's not for the weak. It's a struggle at times, but there's always deadlines. There's release dates. You're always chasing something.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
No, thank you, Ron.
When you're editing the same thing for a while, how do you know if you're not like losing the perspective of what is it good and what it doesn't, and maybe to know that maybe you'll need a couple of fresh eyes to see that if what you're doing is actually good or not, if it's working or not?
You just answered your own question. You show it to people
by asking someone else.
Yeah, you show it to people. There's plenty of times that I sit there and I'm really happy with how the scene is, and you do lose perspective. That's one of the hardest things to sit there and judge. What I do is, because I'll sit at like a computer here and I'll work and I'll get to where I'm really happy with it. And then I'll come into Dave's room and just sit on his couch and watch on his screen, and you look at it a whole different way. If you're cutting, in your office, take your computer home and hook it up to your big TV or TV in your living room and watch it there. Watch it in a different environment that you cut it in, and without any distractions or anything like that. A day later, or and you'll look at it differently. Have somebody just walk into the room and don't ask them for any feedback. You'll look at it differently. If somebody's in the room with you and you get nervous about hitting play, you're going to look at it critically, like really critically, because you think they're judging you on what they're watching, but they're really just trying to enjoy what they're watching. And, but you can't help but go, oh, what do they think? And so you look at it with, it's kind of fresh eyes for you too, putting other eyes on it. It's kind of fresh.
So true. That's happened to me so many times. Like I work on a scene and I think, okay, this is good. This is good. You know, like, okay, Matt, come on in. Let's watch it. And then I swear to God, like 5 seconds in, like, ooh, God, I swear that wasn't like that, you know, or like, oh, what's happening here?
David, Matt, I know they have that kind of cool thing on Avid where you can sort of like flip the whole perspective of a whole scene, you know, so it's playing like kind of like flopped perspective. Sometimes that gives you like a fresh way of looking at a scene, right? Like, because normally you're used to the orientation, like you guys, you know, standing on this side of the frame, but then it flops the frame the other way. Is that sometimes helpful, or like going in a big projection room and seeing the film like you would?
Seeing the, you know, I'll take scenes into our screening room and play them on the big screen instead of in my Avid room, and it's invaluable. I've never done the flop thing. That seems like a really interesting idea because it gives you a whole different way of, you know, of screen direction and where people are going or doing or, you know, coming. And you'll definitely look. I'm gonna have to try that because that sounds like a very
It
interesting.
messes with your head like really bad. It's like really weird. It's like you haven't seen it before. You know, you haven't seen the scene before.
Is that part of the full screen playback thing?
I don't know. I was working with this editor on Avid, like when I was first like coming out of film school, and he had like this one little thing that he would do where it would flop the whole scene, like it would like flop perspective. It was really helpful, actually.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Look, I suggest, you know, turning off the music, turning off the sound, watching it MOS without sound, seeing how it plays, seeing the rhythm of it. Play it at double speed. If it has a nice rhythm playing, you know, at double speed with no sound, it's gonna play great playing at regular speed. But I'm a firm believer in getting a scene to work and getting a scene to really play before you put any sound or music to it.
Wow.
Because sound and music's just smoke and mirrors. You can kind of have a scene that's kind of playing okay, and then you're like, oh my God, look at this, hear this amazing music. And now I put some sound effects in, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then you turn off the sound and music again, and you go, huh. But you want to have it just play with nothing, just the production dialogue and the scene itself. And when you get that scene working and you're really happy with it, then put sound and then put music. And not too much sound. Don't overkill it. Just hit the specific stuff that's happening on screen, you know, because otherwise it starts getting muddled and it's distracting. But if it plays without sound and music, it's going to play so much better with sound and music, and you know you kind of nailed the scene.
But Matt, on the reverse of that, and Dave, like if a scene is really not working and you don't love the acting and the performances are not there, or something's really going wrong with the script, the music and the sound can really help that, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's all, you know, in every movie you have, and they usually end up on the cutting room floor, there's a couple scenes that don't work great, you know. They're not moving the story forward, or the acting's not 100%, or you have a character that you don't like and you cut out. And if you really don't like a character, play most of their dialogue off screen and just show them a little bit on screen, because what you hear is a lot less distracting, or it sounds better than seeing an actor deliver a bad line.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
There's so much truth in that. I love that.